Hey everyone, welcome to Big Flick Energy and Happy New Year's. I wanted to make this video about the top 50 films I've seen for the first time in the year of 2021. So for some background, I actually finished this yesterday. I watched my 50s film yesterday and I'm really happy that I was able to accomplish this. And pretty much it's going to be on how much I enjoyed these films. It's not going to be too much like I'm a critic, it's going to be more like I'm a fan. And while this is my list, it's not the right list. There will be a lot of films that you guys will say that is wrong. And hey, look, that's just the way that I think that these films work. At least for me, that's how they worked. So I hope you enjoy that though, to be able to see a different opinion. And also, I want to say that, once again, these are films that I've seen for the first time this year. They don't necessarily have to be new films. They just have to be films that I had never seen before. And I saw them for the first time in the year of 2021. So I'm really excited for this, and here we go. So to start us off at number 50, we have The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. So it was an intriguing plot, but it had boring execution. I felt like it was a bad closing to the Conjuring trilogy, and for some reason with all of these films, I just can't get attached to any of the characters for some reason. I feel like their personalities are kind of bland, and yeah, it just doesn't connect to me too much. And you're also supposed to sympathize with the pastor in this film, but his decision in the film that he made was something somebody so close to the church would never do. So I felt like it was kind of unrealistic. I did get scared once in the film though, like one massive jump scare, but the issue is it's supposed to be a horror film that's supposed to scare you a lot, and it didn't do that. Now at number 49, we have Troll Hunters: Rise of the Titans. So it's actually a solid film overall, but for some context, this show is basically part 4 of 3 shows in this movie, where the shows are Troll Hunters, 3 Below, and Wizards, and those shows were all pretty good. And the ending of this film happened to ruin not just this film, but those 3 shows as well. So when something does that, it has to drop it towards the bottom of the list for me. Now at number 48, we have Raging Bull. So it was overall a boring film. I felt like it was unnecessarily black and white since color films were already a thing when this one was made. There was nothing about this film that was improved by going black and white, unlike some other projects. I also didn't feel like it was a story that needed to be told. I did find it pretty interesting though how in this story, which is based on true events, it had a lot of similarities to another Martin Scorsese film, where Martin Scorsese directed this film and he also did The Wolf of Wall Street. And for some reason, the stories had a lot of similarities, which I found really interesting. But for this film, I just didn't enjoy it much, and I felt like the only salvation were the performances of Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro, where obviously whenever they're on the screen together, it's going to be amazing. And leaving the film, I still felt like it just wasn't that good, even with those two at the helm. So at number 47, we have Reminiscence. I felt like it was an interesting premise with poor execution. I felt like it was way too slowly placed. It did have great acting though, considering Hugh Jackman was leading it, and he's an incredible actor. But the trailers were honestly better than the movie itself. It was one of those movies where I only watched it because the trailers got me excited for it, and sadly the movie was nowhere near how good the trailers were for me. Now at number 46, we have Diary of a Wimpy Kid 2021. So it was a fun film, but it was very much a copy of the live action, just with some mentions of social media to change it up a little bit. I didn't like how they made both Greg and Rowley unlikable in some ways, so it kind of brought this film down for me because of that. What I did like though is it feels like you're entering the books with the art style, where it's literally the exact same as the books that have become extremely famous, except 3D and in color, but the designs are almost exact, which I loved. So now at number 45, we have The Tomorrow War. So this was actually a movie that had a very fun premise. It was executed well, had a great setup for the final battle. I honestly liked everything about this film. But for some reason, I just can't get excited about it. It's not a memorable film. every time that I try to think about this film, it's like, oh yeah, it was pretty good, but there's nothing about this film that makes me want to go back to that universe, makes me want to see more of it. It was just there. There's nothing special about it. So even though I think I want it to be higher on this list, when I look at the movies above it, I just don't get as excited for this one as I do for the others. Now at number 44, we have the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. So this was the new one that recently came out, and it was obviously nostalgia because of the characters, and it was actually moderately funny, but it drops in comparison to the first SpongeBob movie, which I loved, and who knows, maybe I'll watch it after making this video. But I truly did feel like it had an uninteresting plot, which has kind of been done before in the SpongeBob TV show, so that drops it off. Now at number 43, we have Mortal Kombat. It obviously had great action. However, I felt like it had too many characters to try to get attached to, considering the main character was a completely new character, but it felt like a lot of the characters that they tried introducing, they needed to push their storylines. And for somebody that hasn't really played much of the Mortal Kombat world, I felt like it was difficult for me to understand these characters, and I feel like I would have had to have played the games to understand what a lot of these characters' motives were. And honestly, I can't even remember the name of the new main character because of how many characters they tried introducing. I did feel like it was a good overall story though, but I'm not too excited for the future projects that they're going to do in this universe. Now at number 42, we have The Matrix Reloaded. It actually had even better action sequences than the first Matrix film in my opinion, but sometimes those action sequences were way too long. Like there was one that was about 30 minutes, it could have been resolved in 10 minutes, and I felt like the story was going nowhere. And even though the action sequences was amazing, I was watching it just thinking, okay, where is this going? When is this going to end? And honestly, I'm still not even 100% sure what happened in this film. I felt like it was a very weak story, and I don't know, I just didn't enjoy it that much. The action sequences were the only thing, but eventually they got tiring because of how long they were. Now this film did feel kind of heavily inspired by Star Wars, interestingly enough, which focused on the rebels, and I did like that, but obviously Star Wars, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, it's better than this. I felt like the main characters did have some bland personalities. I felt like it was smart to move the story forward with Agent Smith being upgraded though, so I like that because you need an actual matchup for Neo. And there were still some things about this film that were kind of weird, like the white ghost dudes with dreads. I didn't really understand that part. It was a strangely sexual film. I felt like there was a major editing error in the middle of the film also, with a random fight scene that didn't fit at all, and definitely felt like they accidentally inserted it. And while I do feel like it had a good cliffhanger, this very much felt like a movie that didn't even get me too interested to watch the next one, even though I had to since I wanted to watch all 4 of the Matrix films back to back. Now, number 41, we have Space Jam: A New Legacy. So it's actually a fun film, and it's pretty nostalgic with the Looney Tunes characters, and I'm a huge basketball fan, so I enjoyed it, but as a basketball fan, I was kind of frustrated how different they made the basketball game, where in the original, it was very much a basketball game with 2-pointers, 3-pointers, but in this one, they added style points, which made no sense at all. I found it pretty funny, though, how LeBron recasted his sons for the movie. I also found it funny how, after this film, you had people comparing LeBron and Jordan to see who was the GOAT based on their stats from the game in Space Jam. So I like that, but that's not really what the film was trying to do, so I have to bring it down a little bit. At number 40, we have Tom and Jerry the movie. So this was a fun film. It was nostalgic because of the main characters, but it honestly just wasn't too memorable, and I feel like that's something that brings a lot of films down, where you watch it and you're done with it. Like there's nothing more to talk about it. So that hurts this film. Now at number 39, we have Coming to America. It was a funny film. It had a solid story. I felt like there were unnecessarily politically motivated jokes, which I'm never a fan of. I feel like films, while they can be about some things in the real world, which I do think a lot of films do try to do, and I'm fine with that, and I think it can be done well, I feel like this was a film that it shouldn't have been done. It's a pure comedy movie, and it felt very one-sided politically, which I'm not the biggest fan of, so that brings it down for me. Now at number 38, we have Tenet. So it was actually a really interesting movie, and it had unique action sequences, and it's a strong spy film that I actually did understand what happened. I know a lot of people, that's their criticism of Tenet, that they didn't understand, but I understand that Christopher Nolan films, you really have to focus on what's going on. So I went into it with that, but it just wasn't on par with the other Nolan films. And the remark that Robert Pattinson made to John David Washington towards the end of the film, which was supposed to be like the big twist, it just didn't have that feel for me. It didn't have a good payoff compared to the other Nolan films. It kind of felt out of nowhere, so I wasn't the biggest fan of that one, and I just don't think this film was what I wanted it to be. Now at number 37, we have The Matrix Resurrections. I feel like this was the one that had the worst action from the entire franchise. It kind of forgot what made the original Matrix film great in the action itself. However, I do feel like it was the first film that I felt like I was also in the Matrix, where I wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't, which is something I really wanted from this franchise, so I really like that. The characters do have more personality from the previous films, which is great, but Morpheus was a bit too different from the previous films, along with Agent Smith being way too different from the previous films. He didn't feel like the same character. So I feel like it was a really cool concept for the first act of the film. It was pretty nostalgic, but I still don't fully understand how a lot of the big reveals in the film happened, as a lot of the payoffs were not even explained, which lowers this film on the list a lot for me due to the plot holes. And just the fact that it doesn't remember what made the original great, I feel like this brings this movie down. Now, number 36, we have Black Widow. So it's a standard Marvel film. If it would have been released before Black Widow died in Endgame and right after Captain America Civil War, I would have liked it a lot more. I feel like it had over-the-top plot armor. I mentioned in one of my previous videos. The new characters were great, honestly, especially Elena. I feel like it was an uninteresting plot, though. Taskmaster was done poorly. It had underwhelming action sequences. It did have a good end credit scene, though, that sets up a team up, like I mentioned in my video about the Dark Avengers. But that was kind of known before the film came out, because the directors literally said that the person that's bringing together Dark Avengers, her first appearance would be in Black Widow, and they had to redo it because Falcon and the Winter Soldier came out before. So it was kind of obvious that was going to be the end credit scene. Now at number 35, we have Godzilla vs. Kong. The human characters were, as always, not interesting at all. The plot was pretty basic. It does move up on the list though because of the incredible fight scenes and the score of the film. And I still can't get enough of hearing Godzilla use his laser breath. I just love hearing it for some reason, and these fight scenes are always incredible. Now, number 34, we have Venom, Let There Be Carnage. It was so cool to finally see Venom and Carnage on screen together. Woody Harrelson and Tom Hardy are amazing in their respective roles, so the main characters are incredible. I did feel like it was way too short though. The best scenes were revealed in the trailer. I felt like it was a PG washed Carnage. Felt like a film made just for the end credit sequence. And while the end credit was fantastic, which I discussed in a video about Venom and Spider-Man, the end credit was spoiled for me because film was shown earlier to some fans. Not critics, but fans. So spoilers came out before the film did. So obviously that's not a criticism about the film, but it's a criticism about the marketing of the film, which ruined the film for a lot of people. which I think is fair in my analysis for this film. There was also no depth here, and it was very disappointing along the way to character in Carnage. Only have 3 scenes in the limelight for a long time until rebooted again. Now at number 33, we have The Croods: A New Age. It was a fun film. It was a good follow-up to the first part. It had great music, had great character development, but it was another one of those like The Tomorrow War, which just wasn't too memorable. The only thing that I remember from this film was the music, maybe a little bit of the story also, but it just wasn't too memorable. The only thing is now I have that one song that they played like 5 times in my playlist. Now at number 32, we have Bird Box. It was an extremely suspenseful film. I did feel like the characters were either lovable or hateable, more on the hateable side, especially with Sandra Bullock's character, which I don't like. I think she's a great actress, but I just didn't like her character in this film, and that is never good when that is the main character, where you don't like the main character. I feel like it was a lost opportunity of a conversation about what this thing truly is halfway through the movie, where they saw pictures of it, and for some reason they never even discussed the pictures. I was very eager to see what was going to happen, but it was more of an I want this movie to end type of eagerness, as the film felt a bit repetitive with the present day scenes in the river. It would have been better told as a linear story than with flashbacks that made all the kills obvious they would eventually happen. I do feel like it had a great cast though, and had a very nice ending that I appreciate that. Now at number 31, we have In the Heights. As a Hispanic, some of the sequences felt very close to home. It was a great ending and overall story. Some of the songs were funny, but didn't try to be, like when Abuelita started singing, which I enjoyed that, but that's not what the film was trying to do. But while I did find it funny, I give it some credit because of that, even though that's not what they wanted to do. I feel like it was a very strong cast, but the ladies in the nail salon, I could not stand them. Outside of Vanessa in the film, those ladies were very annoying to me. So those scenes were very hard to watch for me, which kind of brings this down. Now number 30, we have Jungle Cruise. Had a strong cast, had a great story, but it wasn't as funny as I would have hoped, and I feel like the antagonists were somewhat uninteresting. Now, as always, The Rock acted as The Rock, which is always a criticism you're going to get from these films. It was a very fun journey though, and it was great world building that could definitely set up sequels or cinematic universe, like I mentioned in my video about the Disney Park cinematic universe. Now at number 29, we have Step Brothers. It was a very funny film, but given how hyped up this film is, I expected to laugh out loud a lot more often, which I didn't get too many of those moments. Now all the characters were great. I feel like it had an amazing cast and great character development, and it had a great ending. I feel like it was a very good character development moment where you get to see all these characters come back together. So I like that. Now number 28, we have A Quiet Place 2. Felt very much like a continuation of the first, where the first was a great film, but I did feel like it was all too similar to the first film, which made this one feel kind of unoriginal. I did feel like there were likable main characters, like the first one, had some great action sequences, like the first one, but the thing that I really liked about the film was that first flashback intro, which shows how everything started, and that's something I wanted to see. And also, it was a good story, so I like this film. Now at number 27, we have Don't Look Up. So this is a parody or caricature on the world we live in today. It's actually very funny and well done as a parody due to the accuracy of how everybody would react in the world today to the situation be dealt with in the film. Now while that is true, Jonah Hill's character was a bit too unrealistic with how he acted in the film, which was an issue of the script more than anything. I took the film in as a warning of what happens when greed and pride result in the incapability of working together with others on anything, because politics eventually come before the sanctity of human life in most cases, very sadly. So this is a worst case scenario, telling of this, which I thought was brilliant and was about to be in my top 5 of films this year, until I realized the film itself was completely politicized towards one side and tries to push one message of the dangers of politics over everything, while also pushing the danger of one party, which are two messages that completely go against each other, and make this a one-sided film, dropping off this film on my list due to the creators behind the film not even realizing that they themselves didn't learn a single thing from a potentially incredible film that they ruined due to their politics. Now, number 26, Spiral. It's the first Saw movie I've actually ever seen, and it was so gory, to the point of being unwatchable at times. There are times where I had to put my head in my shirt because I could not watch what was happening on screen. It was an incredible story though, and I liked Chris Rock in the film, where finally we have a very interesting protagonist going against this Saw antagonist. And obviously Chris Rock, his charisma is incredible. Now, the twist of who was behind everything was actually obvious to me. I predicted it halfway through the film. But the final twist of the film was so good that it brought this film up for me a lot and made me so excited to see future iterations of this world. The traps were really scary, but it did feel like the people didn't really have a choice and would die with whatever option they chose. Like, there was one trap that the person made a decision to save themselves towards the beginning of the trap, and they still died. So it's kind of an unfair advantage there. So that kind of brings this one a bit down, but the final twist was incredible. Now, at number 25, we have The Impractical Jokers movie. It was probably the worst plot out of any of the films on this list. It's also the worst acting out of any of the films on this list. But it is arguably the funniest film on this list because of all the challenges and punishments the characters go through that I just can't get enough of The Practical Jokers. They're hilarious. Now, number 24, we have Eternals. It had great characters, it had a good twist with who is a protagonist and who isn't, and the final sequence to stop the antagonist was sort of underwhelming. And while it had great cinematography, a strong story, it felt like it should have been told in 2 parts, with the first being in the past against the Deviants, and then the second one could have been what this film was, just without the flashbacks. Now, it had great action, and while one credit scene was weird, the other was pretty cool, but both got me excited for what could be coming in the future. Now, number 23, we have The Matrix Revolutions. So it had a smooth transition from Reloaded to Revolutions, and it was a good explanation for the recast of the Oracle. And something that I wasn't the biggest fan of was Agent Smith gave off Dr. Evil from Austin Powers vibes in the first act of this film, which doesn't fit in this universe at all. But human Agent Smith was actually really interesting. And once again, it feels very Star Wars inspired. I feel like Morpheus was too much of a background character in this film. It also had the worst action in the original trilogy. Obviously, Resurrections had worse action than this. And I felt like it had a solid story, but it kind of forgot what made The Matrix so likable, The Matrix itself, where it felt like a very basic sci-fi war film for a franchise that is supposed to be anything but basic. It also had a pause on Neo's arc in the film for way too long, for like a massive 30 to 45 minute period, where you kind of forget his side of the story is even happening. Now, it's very impressive CGI for its time, and as a heartfelt death of an important character, and I feel like that's kind of ruined by Matrix Resurrections, but I can't hold it against this specific film for that. Now, you can also tell a lot of Agent Smith scenes were cut out, which obviously isn't good, but it did have an amazing score and a great final battle. Now, off to number 22, we have Old. It had a really cool premise where you were thinking the entire movie not only how they would escape, but what was even going on. The payoff took too long to get there though, but it was a great payoff when we found out why the characters were on the beach, which made a lot of sense and a beach would definitely put to this purpose if turning people old so rapidly were real. I still don't really understand why they were turning old though, and how when they escaped worked. It did have a great variety of main characters though, but it's sort of difficult to keep track of each of them. It reminded me a bit of the novel Lord of the Flies by putting these characters in this trap situation, but it's still very different and it's an original story. Now, number 21, we have Luca. It was a fun film with great characters. Now, one of the scenes with Luca and Alberto, it got me pretty sad, but compared to the other Pixar films, it is not top level for me. I'm also not the biggest fan of the animation style, but it has grown on me a little bit since the film came out. It does have a great conclusion though, which shows a lot of character development. Now, number 20, we have The Mitchells vs. the Machines. It's an unexpectedly great film. It had great main characters, the plot was interesting, and it had amazing character development. It was pretty funny, it even got me to cry, but it's brought down a lot because it's one of those films, once again, that just isn't that memorable for me. And honestly, I feel like this could have been the best animated film we've seen in years if it was more memorable for me. Now, number 19, we have The Matrix. So, obviously, incredible action sequences, really cool concept. The third act was fantastic, it had a good twist, great sound effects. But I did wish it delved more into making us also not know if it was The Matrix. Because in the first act, it was way too obvious. I felt like it jumped straight into Neo just knowing it's The Matrix and wanting to leave, which I felt Matrix Resurrections did a much better job in, where it made us not even sure what was real and what was fake, which I really like to see. Also, I feel like the main characters all had very similar personalities, so there wasn't much range of emotions in the film. And it did have a great score, but the true love's kiss payoff in this film, look, it's been done so many times, and it felt off in a film that is so tonally different and kind of a rushed relationship. It didn't seem like Neo had any connection to. Literally, until the kiss, there was no sign that he had attraction towards that other person. So that brings this movie down for me. Number 18, we have Halloween 2018. So it has great action. It's a strong follow-up to the original, actually, and a good start to the new trilogy. I actually watched the original and the two new films in one sitting on Halloween night, so it probably helps these films a lot since I was kind of in the mood. I also kind of found Laurie, the main character though, to be pretty unlikable in this film. It did have realistic kills, and as always, Michael Myers was menacing. Now, number 17, we have Last Night in Soho. It had likable main characters. It had great twists of who is good and who is bad. It had great cinematography. Now, I wish we got to see how Eloise and her abilities work. That was kind of weird that she was able to see these people from the past. And I really wish we got more background about those abilities. It also had some taste of Edgar Wright, director, despite feeling like a very different film from him. So I did enjoy this film. At number 16, we have The Red Notice. This was a hilarious film. It had such great characters. And although they were great characters, it's fair to criticize them also for just being the same characters they play in most films. Once again, The Rock being The Rock, Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds, and I guess some people have this criticism of Gal Gadot, but I feel like she plays sort of a different role in films, so I'm not going to criticize her for that one. Now, I didn't expect the twist reveal at all. I know some people did, but I felt like it was a pretty good twist. And I would definitely watch a sequel when they make it. It also had a solid story, and while it's a pretty standard film that knows what it wants to be, it does it well. So that's why it's high on my list. Now, number 15, we have Halloween Kills. It's a great follow-up to Halloween 2018. The flashbacks worked extremely well for me by telling a continuation of the original film, while telling a continuation of the 2018 story and how they tie in together. It had realistic kills and Michael's menacing as always. Now, I still have that problem with Laurie's character being pretty annoying, but this time, all the legacy characters were pretty annoying. I still don't understand why these characters, when given the opportunity, give Michael a chance to breathe when attacking him. We know he can lose body parts permanently because of what happened with his fingers in this film. So just get rid of his arms or something, and you're good. Or as Thanos once said, you should have gone for the head, bro. Just go for the head, you know? So, while the conclusion wasn't saying it made me extremely anxious to see what happens in Halloween Ends, I'm still confused how Michael Myers went past all the cops to get into the house. But we'll find out in the next part. Now, number 14, we have The Wolf of Wall Street. So it's a fun film with great characters, and it has strong character development. And while I think it's a great film, it doesn't feel like a necessary story to tell to me, and I think it's kind of overhyped, where everybody talks so much about it as an all-time great. Perhaps it's how different my lifestyle is from Jordan Belfort's was, but I just can't relate to him at all. And that's something that hurts this film, where I can't relate to the main character. However, it was an extremely accurate to truth film, which I give a ton of respect for. Jordan Belfort himself has said that it's very accurate, which I really liked. And also, this movie has great music, which always helps a film. Now, number 13, we have 12 Years a Slave. Now, this movie is obviously intense. It really puts you in the past and makes you understand what these specific slaves went through. There are always critics of some films who say, oh, this is a white savior film. But for a situation like the ones these characters were in, the only salvation was a white savior in Brad Pitt's character, because nobody else was allowed to be a savior at these times. Now, it's an incredible telling of a true story, but it does drop off because it feels a bit slow-paced, and it kind of felt very repetitive. Now, it was beautiful seeing Solomon return to his family at the end, so I did like that in this film. Now, at number 12, we have Casablanca. So this is a very old film, but I actually really enjoyed it. It has a good score and a good story with twists. It's actually a very funny film, which I did not expect at all. There was one scene where a character heard a cannon go off, and she said something along the lines of, was that a cannon going off, or is that my heart beating? Obviously trying to be romantic. And then the person that she told that to, the guy literally said, it's a German 77. And when he said that, I don't know why, I died of laughter. I also found it really interesting how I feel like this film was the beginning of the line, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, that they said at the end of this film. And when I heard that, I got really excited. Which, I mean, I guess it's sort of a film of nostalgia, so I liked hearing that. And I also felt like Laszlo, Renault, and Rick were all very likable characters, and Rick has incredible character development. But the main female character, Isla, I forgot how you pronounce her name, I feel like she was very unlikable in this film. Now, number 11, we have Analyze This. So, this is just a really funny and overall fun film, and I had a smile the entire time I was watching it. I also feel like it was such a smart concept that worked really well. It's a great story, and it's a film with a great cast, and it just has great characters. Another Robert De Niro film on this list. Now, number 10, we have Independence Day. So this is such a fun film. It has amazing casting characters, and obviously that iconic Independence Day speech was, like I said, it's iconic. So I was really intrigued to see how this story closed out. Showing how different groups reacted to aliens coming to Earth was also really interesting, and definitely would happen in the real world today. Now, obviously after watching Don't Look Up, I feel like that's a more realistic portrayal of something in space, but they did show some of that in Independence Day, which I liked. Now, number 9, we have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So this was a great story. It's honestly one of the best MCU villains, so I like that a lot. It had very likable characters. The action sequences were incredible. The end credit scenes are great setups. It was pretty funny. The ending fight was kind of out of nowhere though, but it was still really good and definitely inspired by anime, especially Avatar: The Last Airbender, which there were so many scenes that I watched and I was like, this is kind of just Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I feel kind of hurts this film, but it also helps it. So I really did like this film. Now, number 8, we have The Suicide Squad. This was a really fun film. It had great characters, and despite being a pretty unrealistic antagonist, it somehow worked, and I actually felt bad for a giant kaiju, which I never expected to be possible. It was pretty funny also, and it had great action sequences, especially the breakout sequence with Harley, and these are definitely characters I want to explore more. And one end credit scene was funny, and the other is a good setup for the Peacemaker TV show, so I really recommend this film. Now, number 7, a film that I did not expect to be this high is Fred Claus. So I watched this one during the Christmas season, so this one, like the Halloween films, probably got a little boost because I was in the mood, but it's a pretty funny film. And while it had weird sound effects, it had great music. It had very sweet moments that almost got me to cry. I did get teary-eyed. It had an incredible cast and characters. It has incredible character development. It closes and ties in all storylines really effectively. It's pretty suspenseful, and I would argue it's the most underrated film on this list, easily. It's probably the most underrated Christmas film I've ever seen, because nobody talks about it, but it's so good, and I really recommend it. Since, it's still Christmas season, so watch it before it ends. Now, number 6, we have Catch Me If You Can. So this is a Leonardo DiCaprio film, and it's just a great overall film with a great main character that steals the show. He's always 5 steps ahead, with the agent constantly playing catch-up, and it shows how intelligent these characters are. Now, I don't think this film should have started with a flash forward, because without the flash forward, you would be on the edge of your seat the entire time to see what happens to this character and how the story ends, which you kind of don't get with there being a flash forward to start where you kind of know where the story is going to go. But the story does continue after what we initially see with the flash forward, and it does have a very nice ending where the character's mission in life changes, which I really like. Now, number 5, we have Free Guy. So this was a movie that I had heard a lot of people say you have to watch this film. It's so much fun. And when I watched it, I agree. It's such a fun film, and I had a smile throughout the entire film watching it. Now, it's moderately funny. It also has extremely likable characters, and I enjoyed how the world of Free Guy was being approached from 2 different perspectives. It also has solid cinematography. It's secretly a love story, which pays off really well in the end. And I was actually on the verge of crying at one scene. But I held it in, so that's good. Now, it also has incredible music. The cameos were amazing. It has amazing fight scenes. Now, there was one scene that was a plot hole where one character kisses another, despite early in the film we know there isn't a button in the game to kiss a character, so that is a plot hole. But I really did enjoy this film. Now at number 4, we have Justice League. So this is the new one in 2021 that came out, not the old one that came out. And this is such an improvement over the old one, it's not even funny. But I don't want to talk about it as a comparison. I want to talk about it as what this film itself is. And this film was an epic. It had incredible character development, it had amazing action sequences, and one criticism I do have is there are some unnecessary scenes, like the song to Aquaman as he was going in the water, which that scene just felt weird and overly elongated. But seeing Darkseid in this film, it was insane. Everything was explained very clearly. It's a well-told story. One of the best third acts I've ever seen in a superhero film. I would say my top 4 for third acts that I've ever seen in superhero films are probably this one, Infinity War, Endgame, No Way Home, and if we want to go top 5, I'll also throw in another Zack Snyder film in Watchmen, where I would say those are probably my top 5 for third acts, in no specific order. Now, I also do feel like it had great cinematography, and it's definitely a world I want explored more, which had a ton of setups for future projects, which I do hope to make a video on later on in the future. And hey, restore the Snyderverse. Why not, Just do it. Now at number 3, we have Argo. It's a really interesting idea and a true story. It had extremely likable main characters and a great cast. I was on the edge of my seat throughout the third act of the film with anxiety. And they did make a fake movie in this film, which was part of their plan. And I really want to see that fake movie. But I did like this film a lot. It was really cool to see a true story be told like this, where it was both extreme and funny. So I like that. Now, number 2, we have Halloween 1978. So I watched it on Halloween night. I have actually always been scared of possession films. Those are the films that get me scared in the horror genre. But these slasher films have never really gotten me scared until this one. And this is the first and only slasher film to actually scare me, which it did a lot of. I was on the edge of my seat from start to finish, which was in part due to how few characters were killed, interestingly enough. And given the film's small scale, since not too many characters were killed, it actually made this film a lot better, because you never knew when somebody was about to die. This made it so much more intense, and that was kind of unlike Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills. So I feel like that was a pretty interesting difference between these films. I also really liked Laurie's character in this film, unlike the other two. And the characters didn't feel stupid by getting killed, because in a lot of these films, the characters know what's happening and they still put themselves in scenarios to get killed. But in this one, they had no idea what was happening. So it makes sense for them to die the ways that they did. It was also an iconic score. Everybody knows that theme. And Michael Myers truly is a horror movie icon, and probably one of the greatest antagonists in any film that I've ever seen. And I cannot wait to see Halloween Ends. I'm really excited for that film, and it's coming 2022. Now, coming in first place, we have Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, this is kind of obvious, but the fan service was ridiculous. I actually watched it for the first time on opening night, and it was truly an experience. I will show this video of the fan reactions at my theater.
Find Peter Parker. Find Peter Parker!
So as you can see, that was fun. It felt like I was honestly at a massive basketball game. So that was fun. It was a really fun film, and it was probably the most fun experience I've ever had watching a film. Just seeing all these characters come on screen. And it was extremely rare for a movie with so much hype to live up to all of it, but it did. And seeing Toby and Andrew back on screen was just beautiful. Even outside of the multiverse stuff, this film was still incredible. And it established Spider-Man as the Spider-Man we know and love, instead of Iron Boy Jr., which a lot of people have had that criticism for this Spider-Man in the MCU. And that's actually something that I mentioned in a previous video, and something I'm really excited to see in the next trilogy, where he's his own character. It has probably the best nostalgia I've ever seen in a film. And Andrew Garfield saving MJ was great to see as a redemption from not being able to save Gwen Stacy. The Daredevil cameo was great. The end credits were great, where one sets up the next Spider-Man movie. Look, while I understand people may be mad that Spider-Man won't be fighting Tom Hardy's Venom, considering that Venom isn't really a villain, it's better to do a new Venom in the MCU that is the same, since it's the same symbiote, but it's also different since it's going to be a different character. I feel like it was a beautiful film with so much rewatchability. I've seen it twice now. I want to see it more. And I really hope they continue Toby and/or Andrew's universes. And like I said before, restore the Snyderverse. Hey, make The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Let's do it. So, these are the top 50 films that I have seen in the year 2021 for the first time. And I cannot wait to see what comes in 2022. I'm going to make a video on the films I'm the most excited for coming in 2022. And I'm just really looking forward to it. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, comment, turn on the bell notification for new videos when I post them. And you know what? Just down in the comments, let me know what you guys think about this list. If there are any changes you would make, I would love to hear what you guys think about these 50 films. And once again, happy New Year, and see you next time on Big Flick Energy.